Hello, everyone. This is Ubaid. I'm the founder and CEO of The Recruiters. Welcome to my podcast, Victory Spectrum. Today, we have a remarkable guest. His name is Mr. Thomas Roulet. He's a chair professor of organizational sociology and leadership at University of Cambridge. His research has been published by Financial Times, Bloomberg, The Economist. He published regularly in Harvard Business Review, MIT Sloan Management Review. He was recognized by the Young Global Leader, by World Economic Forum, and a fellow of Academy of Social Sciences. Please welcome Thomas Roulet. Hello, Thomas. Hope you are doing well.
Thank you so much, Obaid. I hope you're well.
Absolutely. I'm doing great. So, Thomas, let's start with your favorite topic, that is well-being. In your opinion, how leaders of the organization can create the environment in which their employees feel comfortable to talk about their mental well-being?
Well, that's a really good question to start with. Thank you so much. So, if we look at mental health and how it has been discussed in the workplace, for a very long time it was stigmatized, and a lot of people are not comfortable talking about their stress or their anxiety in the workplace. So it's really about making it, part of the routine and something that is more natural than it used to be, so that people can openly talk about how they're experiencing stress and anxiety, so that leaders and managers can help out with that. So, something as simple as having well-being agenda, meaning, for example, talking about well-being in annual evaluation or in weekly discussions, or having people, share about their feeling, their experience of work, having leaders and managers talk about when they are experiencing stress and anxiety, can really help people open up about what
Okay.
they're experiencing.
Okay. Can you highlight the most common mistakes leaders make when addressing about employee well-being?
One of the most common mistakes that organizations do, and managers in general, is they only tackle well-being when it has become a huge problem already. So when people are burnt out, when people are,
Yeah.
are experiencing crippling anxiety. And in fact, you can tackle it much more upstream. You can tackle it at the culture level when there is, like, for example, struggle with work-life boundaries, struggle with work-life balance, overwork. That causes people to then down the line experience burnout, stress, and anxiety. So if you tackle it much earlier stage, then it is much more effective than tackling it when it actually happens. Because if not, you just have, waves of people experiencing burnout, and it becomes quickly out of control. So really trying to have the right culture, as we said, the ability to discuss this in the front, upstream is actually quite helpful.
Okay. In your opinion, what are the major and essential skills which are important to thrive in the future workplace?
Oh, that's a really good question. I have an entire MBA course about that, Obaid. So you're gonna have to turn
Okay.
to Cambridge to experience this. That will be very long. No, I think if there is one thing I should say, I think what people need, uh, to master right now is the ability to reskill, to unlearn and learn again, because we are experiencing the fastest growth in technological adoption that we have ever seen. Gen AI was the fastest adopted technology in the workplace. You look at ChatGPT was adopted by 1 million people in 5 days. So
Yeah.
that means, today it's Gen AI. Tomorrow it might be a different skill set, a different technology. So you need people to be able to relearn and reskill, learn new things at a very fast pace, and be able to shift and be agile with what they do on a daily basis, what they do with their work. So the work that we do today will be very different than the work we will do tomorrow, whether it's you, me, or anybody. So we have to really be able to shift between different skills.
If we ask you to share one major prediction about the future of work, what it would be actually, the prediction,
Wow, only
the future of work.
one prediction with the future of work. Uh,
You can make it multiple.
I
Yeah.
can make it multiple. I think the world of work is going to stay hybrid. That's now the world we are in. So hybrid work will be the norm. It is the norm already, but it will be stable norm despite the blips of Amazon and other doing return to the office. We will experience hybrid working. The second thing is today it's Gen AI, as I said, but tomorrow we'll have new technologies really affecting the workplace at
Okay.
a much faster pace. So I think the future of work is hard to predict just because we don't know what will be the next technologies coming up. But I think now we're gonna go through cycles. Every 5 years there will be something really that will affect the way we work and will reshuffle organizations and individuals' competitive advantage. So we're gonna go through cycles of 5 years max of shifting gear, shifting the value creation mechanisms in organizations, and as individuals, the sort of value mechanism that we derive from our own skills.
Okay. As far as remote work is concerned, what effective strategies leaders opt to build and maintain trust in the remote teams? Can you please specify, sir?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, as you point out in your question, trust in the context of hybrid working is not as easy to set up for a simple reason is when we meet and exchange like we are doing right now on Zoom, on Teams, it's much harder to establish trust because you only see part of the tacit implicit cues that I use, the way I move, the way I talk, the emotions I'm experiencing. So we lose a lot of this in remote interaction, in interactions intermediated by screens. So it is difficult to establish the same level of trust if we only work remotely, if we only interact this way, by contrast than if we meet in person. So I
Yeah.
think one way to establish trust in teams is to have a degree of in-person interactions. Okay, so even the firms that already are completely remote, like startups, for example, they have a week of retreat where they bring everybody back together, and they have people doing activities in common, doing brainstorming, thinking about the culture of their organization, and doing this in person. And the value of those moments spent in person are impossible to replace. They are absolutely unique and crucial. And so that's where you can establish the trust. And then you can further develop the trust with, sharing about non-work elements in our life, in online interactions. But you can only really do that if you have established a basic level of trust.
Okay. Can you please share some inspiring examples of the organizations which are thriving in remote work era?
It is a really good question as well because firms have been really shifting.
Okay.
Many firms have shifted back and forth in their approach to remote and hybrid working. A simple example, for example, is IBM. IBM was a pioneer on remote work. Way
Okay.
before we thought about remote work as a thing, they were pioneers. But if you look at the interviews, the latest interviews of the CEO, you can read that they are quite skeptical about some aspects of remote work, and they don't necessarily see all the nuance of remote work. One firm that has been quite consistently doing well, and a CEO that has been consistently talking about this in a way that made sense is Microsoft. Uh,
Okay.
and Microsoft, Satya Nadella always have been, quite a good advocate of a hybrid system. And why does he know he needs it? He needs it to attract the right talent. And he has been quite consistent, contrary to a lot of CEOs, a lot of organizations that have been inconsistent. Amazon, had a great hybrid work policy just a few years back, and now it's everybody returning to the office.
Yeah.
So
Because human touch is missing.
because the human touch is missing, or in the case of Amazon, because they want people to leave without having to fire them. But the problem with that is that if you have return to the office, you bring everybody back to the office, it's a breach of social contract. People get pissed and they resign and they leave, and you end up with not the great performer. You end up with the lowest performers who don't have opportunities to work elsewhere. So if I have one example to give, Microsoft knows the cost of working remotely because in 2021 there was a massive experiment that was run at Microsoft on the impact of remote work on innovation, and it showed the challenges of working remotely when it comes to innovation. It showed that people were working a lot less across silo than they used to before COVID. So Microsoft, they know the cost of remote work, but they still believe in it and they still know that they need it to attract the right talent.
Okay. You've also written an article on turning conventional entrepreneurs into social entrepreneurs, especially for developing countries.
Yeah, that's something I wrote very early in my career, like maybe 10 years ago. I think
Yeah,
it was one of my
but
first
it's an
articles.
amazing piece actually of research.
Well,
Can you
that's
please
very
share
nice of
actually
you. That's very nice of you. I think, it was at the time.
from conventional profits conversion into the social impact profits? Am I
Yeah,
right, sir?
yeah, and I think now there's a lot more research on that topic, but at the time it was pretty novel to see that people could shift from one to another. And now it's very common. Look at OpenAI. OpenAI, shifted the other way around. It was a non-profit that became a profit-oriented organization. And so we see a lot more organizations shifting from one to the other. And why? Because purpose is value, and you can
Okay.
generate value through purpose, but you can also generate economic value that can then be transferred into social purpose. And the typical aspect is very often, you think about famous social entrepreneur, whether it's Mohammed Yunus or other, they often
Okay.
start with an idea that worked economically. Microfinance, it was, effective financially and economically before it was seen as a social innovation.
Okay.
So you have a lot of those innovations that can be, that are social innovation that can become business innovation. So I give you one other example. This week I was at a defense, PhD defense of a PhD student called John Lorenzo Meggio, and he works on blockchain voting. So voting through online means. That's a social innovation, but also it's a huge business opportunity. And they see it
Okay.
as contributing to the society, but it has a lot of potential business avenues and business opportunities that can come out of there.
Okay. Other than microfinance sector, suppose one business conglomerate which deals in textile sector or any other sector, suppose pharmaceutical, how we convince them to become a social entrepreneur, social impacting.
Well, I think if they generate the resources to
Okay.
generate the resources to be a social enterprise and to have a social impact, very often a technology, and I was talking about the advent of new technologies. Very quickly, I think we'll discover that technologies have a massive impact. And I give you another example. Gen AI. Gen AI, okay, we see it as a great business opportunity. But there is a
Okay.
paper that was just discussed this week on the impact of Gen AI on education. So we have a huge social impact of Gen AI on the ability for students in developing countries to learn through online tools and to get feedback on what they learn and how they learn. So clearly, that's a tool that can be developed for business that has a social innovation implication. Gen AI has many social innovation implications from education to healthcare. So I think it's about locating ways in which something that creates economic value can create social value.
Okay. Now come back to your the first topic, that is well-being. It's a buzzword nowadays. For example, we are a lot of companies and corporations are talking about employee well-being. For example, if you are a sales guy and you are not meeting the key performance indicators as defined by the company, at the end of the day, you will face the pressure from your peers, from your supervisors. How do they handle actually? In your research, in your opinion, sir?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. Is this tension between well-being and productivity? But very often people don't understand that this is very closely related. And so we had
Okay.
a big experiment that we ran with Vitality. Vitality is an insurer in the UK. And we captured motivation, productivity, well-being. Okay, the three are strongly intertwined, meaning your very productive employee, they might be productive at the cost of their well-being. And they are at risk at some point of burning out, of experiencing crippling stress and anxiety that then will make their well-being drops. And it's exactly what we saw and observed during the COVID pandemic. When we shifted to remote work in 2020 in most developed countries, including in the UK, in the US, or in other countries, we observed that there was a rise in productivity. You look at official statistics, productivity went up for 6 months. And then, boom, there was a wave of burnout, people really experiencing a lot of struggle with their mental health, with their level of stress and their level of anxiety. And so that's a core answer to your question, is that productivity, a high level of productivity can only happen for so long and might happen to the cost of well-being. So you need a balance between the two. To remain productive on the longer term, you need to take time off. You need to take holidays. You need to take time to actually replenish your battery, take a step out, and then come
To
back.
recharge.
Yes, come back recharge. And this is not a, this is not a myth. There is research showing that really, when you go back for holidays, you disconnect, you actually replenish your battery, and your risk of burnout goes down. So it is really quite important to have a sense of this work-life balance, of being able to disconnect, work intensely, be engaged with work, but also have this ability to disengage so that you gain step back. So and your best workers, your most engaged, productive workers, they are very often those that don't want to take holidays, that are very engaged with work. They are very anxious and stressed, but they can only be so long that they can experience this and remain productive at the same level. So really, if you want engaged workers, loyal workers that are also productive and motivated, you really need to create a space for them to preserve their well-being.
Okay. Thomas, last question. Your message for the employers, how to create a future-ready workforce?
Well, I mean, I think one thing I would go back to is what I said earlier, is the ability to learn and unlearn, relearn, reskill. And that means having a very strong learning and development, function. Exactly.
Okay.
Learning and development function, and HR that can not only do and deliver those trainings and get people to, learn those new skills, but also the ability for L&D to identify what are the skills that will be necessary in the near future. And the third thing that those L&D departments need to do, because the skills that we need, we don't know yet what are the skills that we need. We need people to learn from each other. We need spheres and space in the workplace where people can really learn from each other. And I give you an example. GenAI, a lot of people now are using GenAI in organization, but the best way for you to know how to use GenAI in your work on a daily basis is to look at what others in your same function are doing. So you need some benchmarking. You need people to tell you what they are doing, and then you can learn from each other in organizations what are the best use for those new technologies. And that seems very simple, but that's part of learning and development as well. So using the skills already that are developed in-house and bringing some of those external skills to diffuse skills within organization is really crucial.
Okay. Thank you so much, Thomas. Thank you so much for your time. It's an amazing learning experience having the podcast with you. Pleasure. And viewers, I hope you enjoyed the podcast as well. Stay tuned for more episodes. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you so much. Thank you.